It began like any ordinary Sunday morning in the suburbs. I was half awake, cradling a lukewarm cup of black coffee, watching a squirrel engage in a one-sided war with our bird feeder. Elena, my wife, sat beside me on the porch swing, wrapped in her favorite gray shawl, sipping lemon ginger tea like she did every weekend. Ritualistic, serene, unshakable. The wind was soft, the neighborhood silent except for the occasional distant lawnmower. And then the world turned upside down. Without warning, a black van, unmarked, armored, humming with menace, skidded to a screeching halt in front of our house. It was the kind of entrance that belonged in an action film, not Pinewood Estates. The van doors flung open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed out. Kevlar vests, black boots, mirrored shades. One of them yelled, "HOA compliance enforcement," as if that were an actual legal department, and they sprinted up our driveway like a SWAT team on a raid. What the hell? I barely got the words out before they reached us. They didn't ask questions. They didn't show a badge. They just grabbed Elena, ripped her right off the swing, tea mug still in her hand, and started dragging her across our perfectly manicured lawn. One of her slippers came off. I stood frozen, every nerve firing, adrenaline punching me in the chest. But it wasn't the violence that paralyzed me. It was her face. Elena didn't scream, didn't fight. She didn't even look surprised. She glanced back at me calmly, like this was all part of some weird yoga schedule, and winked. Then they shoved her into the van, slammed the door, and peeled off down the street. I stood there, coffee spilling over my fingers, wondering if I'd just imagined the entire thing. The porch swing creaked beside me, still swaying. It took 10 full seconds before I could move. Then I bolted inside and grabbed the phone, hands trembling. 911, what's your emergency? My wife's just been kidnapped, I said, voice cracking. 3 guys in tactical gear. They said they were from the HOA. There was a pause on the line. Then the dispatcher's tone shifted, subtly, but enough to make my stomach flip. Sir, she said carefully. Did you say HOA enforcement? Yes, I snapped. They came in a black van, military gear, everything. Another pause. Sir, we've had similar reports in your area. I need you to stay where you are. Do not pursue them. Do not touch anything. Officers are on their way. What the hell is going on? I demanded. Is this some kind of joke? But she just repeated, "Stay put," and hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. I dropped the phone and staggered backward, my mind racing. Nothing made sense. HOA enforcers? Since when did lawn committees have tactical teams? And Elena, that look in her eyes, that wink. It wasn't fear. It wasn't despair. It was something else. Premeditation. She wanted to be taken. But why? I rushed to the living room, nearly tripping over the dog bed. Her phone was still on the kitchen counter. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? Are you okay?" No response. Then I saw it, blinking in the corner of our smart home hub. A small red light. A message. Pine Protocol. Activated. I'd never seen that message before. Heart thudding, I tapped the screen. A click echoed behind me. I turned just in time to see part of our bookshelf slide open, like something out of a spy movie. A hidden panel revealed a steel case sitting in the hollowed-out wall. I stared. There was a biometric scanner on the lid. It beeped once, recognized my face, and the latch released. Inside, a slim, matte black laptop, a burner phone, and a folded envelope marked Jack, written in Elena's handwriting. I opened the letter with shaking hands. If you're reading this, I've been taken. Don't panic. This is part of the plan. What plan? I know this is going to be hard to believe. I work for the CIA. Technically, I'm retired, but Pinewood Estates isn't what it seems. The HOA is a front for something much bigger. My mind exploded in static. The CIA? My wife? I embedded myself here to monitor a suspected laundering operation. The HOA board, especially Veronica Dale, is involved. Don't trust anyone, not even your neighbors, especially not Veronica. I nearly dropped the letter. I sank onto the couch, every nerve in my body short-circuiting. The quiet, green-thumbed woman I shared coffee with every Sunday? CIA? And our pristine neighborhood? The one obsessed with mailbox color codes, was a hub for international crime? I turned on the laptop. No password. Facial recognition scanned me and opened straight into a secure portal labeled Operation Porchlight. My breath caught. This was no dream. No misunderstanding. This was real. I clicked on the first file. Maps of the neighborhood, marked with red pins, surveillance footage, financial documents, a thick digital dossier on Veronica Dale. And that's when I realized I wasn't a bystander in some strange HOA drama. I was now a player in an operation I didn't even know existed. And if I wanted to get Elena back, I'd have to start playing like one. My heart was still pounding when I opened the second file on the laptop. The screen flickered once, and then displayed a title that made my stomach twist. Target: Veronica Dale. Threat level: severe. Status: active. Alias: unknown. There were pages of intel, PDFs, images, satellite snapshots, fake company invoices, all connecting Veronica, our HOA president, to something far deeper than community flower regulations. According to Elena's report, Veronica wasn't just an overbearing suburban tyrant. Her real name was Veronica Deletska, born in Moldova, entered the US on a falsified student visa. Over the years, she'd climbed through the ranks of multiple HOAs across the country. Each time, the same pattern emerged: rise to power, implement aggressive fines, route money through fake contractors, then vanish before anyone caught on. This time, she had stayed too long. Elena had been investigating Pinewood Estates for over a year. Her so-called retirement was just a cover, one she wore like a second skin. She'd embedded herself in the community, taught yoga, baked zucchini bread, smiled politely at block parties, all while gathering evidence, all while sleeping beside me. I didn't know whether to be impressed or heartbroken. A message flashed on the burner phone. Mallory, secure line. We saw the van. She's okay, for now. Call me. I hit dial. A calm female voice answered. Mr. Harper? Yes, where is she? What the hell is going on? This is Mallory. I'm part of Elena's unit. We've been tracking her since the takedown. She knew this might happen. She volunteered for this assignment, but it's escalated. What do you mean escalated? She's being held at a secure location. We believe the HOA's enforcement team is actually a private military group. Off-book contractors hired through shell companies linked to Veronica. I stared at the wall, jaw clenched. What do I do? Stay put. And whatever you do, don't let anyone from the HOA near your house. The line went dead. I stood frozen, my thoughts spiraling. Don't let them near the house? Too late. I turned toward the window and saw her, Veronica Dale, standing calmly on my front lawn in a lavender blouse and beige slacks like she was about to offer me banana bread. Her hair was pinned back tight. Her signature binder clutched to her chest like a holy book. Behind her stood two of the same fake officers who had dragged Elena off the porch. Only now, they wore matching sunglasses and smug grins. Mr. Harper, she called out sweetly. We need to speak about your wife's recent violations. My blood turned to ice. She wasn't here for a chat. She was here to see if I knew anything. I forced a dopey smile, waved nervously through the glass like a clueless husband whose wife had just been taken away by gardening police? HOA hitmen? Who the hell even knew anymore? Veronica gave me a tight nod. Then, mercifully, she turned and walked away, her henchmen trailing behind her like discount mall cops. The moment they disappeared down the street, I locked every door, shut every blind, and slumped against the wall, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. This was no longer about fines for grass height or mailbox symmetry. This was war, and my wife, my lemon ginger tea sipping, yoga teaching wife, was in the middle of it. No, she wasn't in the middle. She'd orchestrated it. From our living room, from our porch swing. I dove back into the laptop, hands shaking. The files were sprawling. Timeline logs, communication records, surveillance photos. Operation Porchlight. Overview. Elena Harper, codename Sparrow, assigned to Pinewood Estates under non-official cover. Enoch. Mission. Investigate HOA-led laundering network suspected of funneling money to offshore accounts through false citations, fines, and fake landscaping services. I kept scrolling. Veronica's folder alone had over 300 entries. Transactions, travel to Eastern Europe, meetings with suspicious contractors under various aliases. There was even an invoice made out to a security firm in Nevada. No client name, no contact number, no business address. Just one note. Special Compliance Unit Deployment, Pinewood. That was the team who took Elena. These weren't just wannabe enforcers. They were mercenaries, armed and trained. The implications hit me like a brick. HOA dues from innocent residents, people like Mrs. Langston down the street who just wanted her fence repainted, were being used to fund an international laundering ring. And I had complained about the community pool not having enough umbrellas. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from the burner phone. Secure channel. New message. Backup is in the neighborhood. Don't engage unless necessary. Look for signs. They're watching too. What did that even mean? I stepped cautiously onto the back porch, scanning the yard. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Birds chirping, wind blowing through the hammock. Then I saw her. Mrs. Jensen, our nosy next-door neighbor, watering her plants. But she was watering the same bush, over and over, then moving in a loop, back to the same one, then another, circling again. She wasn't gardening. She was signaling. I raised my hand slightly. She glanced up, gave a quick gesture with her fingers, and disappeared inside. I swallowed hard. So, Elena had a team, and apparently, they were already in position. That night, after sunset, I snuck across the yard under cover of darkness, heart pounding like a war drum. Mrs. Jensen opened the door before I even knocked. "Get in," she whispered. "They'll be sweeping the street again in 10. Her living room looked like a suburban version of the Pentagon. Wall-to-wall monitors, radios, a map of the neighborhood marked with thumbtacks and strings. There was even a drawer labeled Operation Suburbia, Phase 2. "You?" I managed. She smiled. "Codename, Ivy. Try not to laugh. We all picked plant names." I didn't laugh. I was too stunned. "You were always part of the plan," Ivy said, handing me a flash drive and a map. "You were the chaos card, the unpredictable variable. She trusted you to shake the system." "Me?" I blinked. "I don't even know how to change the Wi-Fi password." She chuckled. "Exactly." Then her face turned serious. "Elena's in the bunker beneath the clubhouse. She planted a tracker in her sandal. We're triangulating her location. But we need you to do one thing." "What?" "Disable the clubhouse security uplink. She wired it into your smart system during those tech upgrades. You're the only one who can do it without raising suspicion." I took the flash drive with trembling fingers. Elena, my wife, the woman I thought I knew, was somewhere underground, surrounded by mercenaries, and it was my turn to fight back. I never thought I'd find myself hiding behind a hedge, heart racing, holding a flash drive that could determine whether or not my wife made it out alive. But that's exactly where I was. Crouched in the shadows behind the HOA clubhouse, waiting for 2 HOA officers to finish smoking what smelled like cheap cigars and discussing fantasy football. If only they knew they were standing guard over a security uplink disguised as a lawnmower. 10 minutes earlier, I'd been in Ivy's living room, surrounded by monitors, encrypted radios, and what I swear was a CIA-issued French press. "You've got one shot," she told me. "Plug the flash drive into the uplink. It'll shut down their surveillance grid for 10 minutes. That's all the window we get." "Great," I replied. "No pressure." She smiled and handed me a paper map, drawn over a takeout menu from a Chinese place. "The uplink's in the storage shed behind the clubhouse, disguised as a gardening tool. You'll know it when you see it." "Anything else?" She leaned in, voice low. "Don't get caught." Helpful. I left her house just before dusk, wearing what I assumed was inconspicuous suburban spy gear. A hoodie, jeans, and my best attempt at looking like a guy out for an evening jog with no coordination. I carried the flash drive in an old protein bar wrapper. Classic dad move. Now I was here, hidden in the bushes, watching the two guards finally stub out their cigars and wander off, probably for their nightly taco break. Time to move. I slipped through the fence, keeping low, every leaf crunch sounding like an alarm in my ears. The shed loomed ahead, just a boring maintenance structure tucked behind the clubhouse with peeling paint and a sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." Perfect. The door was locked, but thankfully, Elena had taught me how to pick basic locks one night over wine and old spy movies. I used to think it was romantic. Now I realized it was training. The lock clicked open. I ducked inside. The smell of fertilizer and mildew hit me like a wall. I scanned the shed. Nothing looked high-tech. Just bags of mulch, a stack of broken rakes, and a rusty push mower. Then I saw it. A brand new electric lawnmower, way too fancy for a budget HOA like ours. I knelt beside it, lifted the front casing, and sure enough, there it was. A glowing port nestled beneath a false battery pack. I jammed in the flash drive. A soft beep. Then the indicator turned green. I exhaled. 1 second of relief. Then bolted out of the shed, ducked behind the hedge, and sprinted back to my yard like my life depended on it. Which, let's be honest, it probably did. Back inside, I barely had time to catch my breath before the burner phone buzzed. Incoming secure voice message. Elena. I pressed play. Her voice came through, ragged but focused. "Nice work, babe. They're blind now. Extraction's coming soon. You did good. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything. I promise I'll explain it all, once I'm out." Static followed. Then silence. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the phone. My wife, the woman who cried during dog food commercials, had just orchestrated a counterintelligence blackout from a basement cell. I'd never loved her more. The next morning, Ivy called a meeting. Not in a dark bunker or an encrypted chat room, but in Bob's garage, which was disguised as a model train workshop. Inside were 3 other agents I'd only known as neighborhood oddballs. Bob, the grumpy old man who always yelled at kids to stay off his lawn. Actually a former Black Ops commander with a thing for tiny locomotives. Priya, the over-enthusiastic dog walker who spoke 6 languages and could hotwire anything from a toaster to a drone. George, our friendly neighborhood mailman, who'd been intercepting HOA documents for the past year like a low-key 007. And then there was me, still in disbelief, still somehow part of this insane mission. They briefed me quickly. "Tonight's the breach," Ivy said. "Liv's team will come through the tunnel beneath the clubhouse. Your job is to stall Veronica." "Stall her how?" I asked. Bob grunted. "You'll attend the monthly HOA budget meeting." "Pose as a concerned homeowner," Priya added, smiling. "Object to something absurd, like a noise ordinance on sprinkler timing. Meanwhile," George said, "we'll have the rest of the pieces in motion." It was surreal. Like a dinner party hosted by Mission Impossible. I was given my cover story, a made-up complaint about a fake fine for leaving garden gnomes out past curfew, and a role to play. We were crashing the HOA meeting, and for once it wouldn't be about fence height or grass shades. That evening, I walked into the clubhouse like a man with a purpose and a secret agenda. The room was set up like every HOA meeting ever. Painfully neutral carpet, plastic chairs, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look vaguely criminal. Veronica stood at the front, radiating smug control in a beige blazer and perfectly pressed slacks. She handed me a printed agenda thicker than a phone book. "Mr. Harper," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Glad to see you taking your civic duties seriously." I forced a grin. Wouldn't miss it. I took my seat. Priya sat beside me, casually tossing a bag of dog treats onto the table. Bob was in the control booth pretending to adjust the lights. George stood by the fire exit with a clipboard, looking bored. Everything looked normal. But beneath the surface, the game was on. At the 7-minute mark, I raised my hand. "Yes, Mr. Harper?" Veronica asked, still smiling. "I just wanted to ask," I said innocently, "why the clubhouse budget includes a $14,000 line item for advanced noise management equipment." Her smile twitched. "That's for community concert support," she said too quickly. "In the basement?" I pressed. Her eyes flicked to the corner. Recognition, then calculation. She knew. She knew we were onto her. But she didn't panic. She adjusted. That was the scary part. Priya leaned over and whispered, 8-minute mark. Showtime. I nodded. The storm was coming, and this time we were bringing it to her front door. The clubhouse smelled like lemon-scented lies. I sat among a dozen other homeowners under the flickering fluorescent lights, pretending to care about budget line items and shrub trimming ordinances while my heart pounded like a war drum. The room was bland on purpose. Beige walls, vinyl chairs, a podium that looked stolen from a middle school spelling bee. But tonight, it wasn't just a community meeting. It was a battlefield in disguise. At the head of the room stood Veronica Dale, poised as always in her trademark beige suit and lavender scarf. Her HOA binder was open before her like a sacred text. She scanned the room with the cool precision of a predator. When her eyes landed on me, she smiled wider than necessary. "Mr. Harper," she cooed. "Glad you could join us. We're just about to begin." I nodded and took my seat next to Priya, who looked every bit the innocent dog walker, clutching her oversized purse filled with treats. Inside was a flash grenade disguised as a milk-bone bag. To her right, Bob sat in the control booth, fingers dancing across a concealed keypad wired into the lighting system. George leaned against the wall near the exit, arms folded, eyes scanning. It looked like a perfectly ordinary HOA meeting, which was exactly the point. The plan was simple. Stall Veronica long enough for Elena's team to breach the underground tunnel from beneath the stage, using the window we'd created by disabling the security uplink. We had 12 minutes, give or take, before the surveillance system rebooted and our window slammed shut. At minute 6, Veronica began droning on about water usage violations, fence paint uniformity, and something called the Seasonal Color Harmony Initiative, which apparently banned orange tulips next to red begonias. At minute 8, I raised my hand. "Yes, Mr. Harper?" she asked, her voice sweet as arsenic. I cleared my throat. "I noticed the clubhouse budget includes a $14,000 charge for advanced noise management equipment. What exactly is that?" A slight pause. Her smile tightened. "That's for community concert support." "In the basement?" I said casually. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. She knew that I knew. But she didn't flinch. She adjusted like all great manipulators do. She straightened her scarf and turned the page. "This meeting is for authorized agenda items only, Mr. Harper," she said smoothly. "Let's stay on track." We were at minute 9. Priya, accidentally, dropped her purse. It hit the floor with a soft thud. As she leaned down to pick it up, she caught my eye and gave the faintest nod. Minute 10. Suddenly the lights flickered. Then the buzzing began. A low, static hum pulsing through the speakers. Bob's interference plan was working. Wi-Fi scrambled, cameras disabled. Veronica stiffened. She glanced toward the control booth and then to the side exit. "This meeting is adjourned," she said abruptly, gathering her binder. Too soon. She was trying to bolt. She moved toward the side door, but I stepped in front of it, casually blocking her path. "Leaving so soon?" I asked, voice light. "You're obstructing HOA procedure," she hissed, low enough for only me to hear. "And you're laundering money through dead landscaping companies, Karina Deletska." Her entire face froze. The name hit like a bullet. For the first time, her mask slipped. She didn't deny it. She signaled. 2 of her so-called board members, men I'd seen taking minutes, sprang into action, drawing pistols from their briefcases. "Now!" Priya shouted. She tossed the dog treat bag across the room. It burst open mid-air, releasing a blinding flash of white and blue light. Chaos exploded. People screamed. Chairs crashed. Veronica turned to flee, but George, our mailman turned field agent, remotely locked the fire exit, trapping her inside. Then it happened. The trapdoor beneath the stage blew open, and Elena rose from the darkness like a storm reborn, dust-covered, bruised, eyes blazing. In one hand, she held a stun baton. In the other, a GPS tracker, blinking softly. She looked like hell. She looked perfect. "Did you miss me?" she said, her voice steel. Veronica lunged, But Elena moved faster. One jolt. One sweep of the leg. The queen of HOA fell flat on her back, gasping for air. The remaining thugs tried to run. But outside, George's team had set up net traps and motion-triggered die markers. The whole scene looked like a suburban SWAT ambush. But instead of black ops, it was floral shirts, clipboards, and tactical sprinklers. Within minutes, the real authorities arrived, or at least the ones who were allowed to know. Federal agents posing as landscapers swarmed the scene, quickly securing the clubhouse, collecting data, and escorting Veronica out in cuffs. She didn't speak, not a word, just stared at Elena with seething hatred as they shoved her into the black SUV. "You should have stuck to garbage bin citations," Elena muttered. Then she turned to me, mud-smeared, exhausted, but grinning like hell, and collapsed into my arms. The rest of the night was a blur. The official story would be embezzlement, impersonation charges, a rogue HOA president with delusions of grandeur. But the truth? That would remain buried with the tunnel. Back home, Elena and I sat on the porch swing again. She had a fresh mug of lemon ginger tea. I had bourbon. "I should have told you sooner," she said softly. I looked at her, still processing the night. "You kind of did, just in your own weird spy wife way." She laughed. A real, tired laugh. And for the first time in what felt like 1,000 years, I saw the woman I married again. Only now, I also saw the soldier, the strategist, the survivor, and I knew this wasn't over. Because monsters like Veronica don't act alone. And something told me, the HOA had more board members than we ever imagined. The calm didn't last long. For a few days, Pinewood Estates felt eerily normal. Neighbors trimmed their hedges, kids rode scooters. The HOA clubhouse, still taped off for maintenance, stood like a monument to quiet chaos. No one spoke openly about what had happened. But you could feel it in the way people made eye contact now, longer, more knowing, like we'd all been through a storm together and somehow come out the other side. Elena, of course, slipped back into suburbia like nothing had happened. Her bruises faded, her eyes softened, and the porch swing creaked under us every night like it used to. But I knew she was listening, always. Her new agency-issued laptop now lived in our linen closet, right next to the extra towels. Then came Ted. He arrived one sunny morning in a spotless BMW, wearing crisp khakis, boat shoes, and a polo shirt embroidered with the HOA logo. Like it was a badge of honor, not a warning sign. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses too reflective, smile too polished. "Elena Harper?" he said, standing on our porch. "Jack Harper? I'm Theodore Reed, the interim HOA president, appointed by, let's just say, upper management." That phrase stopped us cold. There was still an upper management? Ted talked about rebuilding trust, restructuring community standards, and protocol adherence, all wrapped in layers of suburban politeness. But then he added something that made Elena's knuckles tighten around her mug. "We'll be reevaluating all surveillance permissions tied to homeowner behavior monitoring." He wasn't just here to pick up the pieces. He was here to bury what was left and replant something worse. After he left, Elena pulled me inside. "I picked up a transmission while he was on the porch," she said, flipping open her laptop. "Encrypted. Not local police band. Ivy. Just cracked it." Ivy's message came through 10 minutes later. "Ted isn't new. He's private sector. Connected to one of the shell companies exposed during the takedown. They're trying to restore the operation. Quietly. And this time, they're angry." Elena didn't hesitate. That night, she called a meeting, not of agents, but of residents. 20 or so people gathered under the backyard string lights Elena once claimed were just for ambiance. In truth, they were wired with motion sensors and signal boosters. She told them a version of the truth, not about the CIA or tunnels, but about corruption, manipulation, and how the HOA had turned their peaceful neighborhood into a data-mined, fear-driven zone of control. She ended with one line. "If we don't push back now, we'll lose Pinewood all over again. But this time, no one's coming to save us." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Davis, the grump who once filed an actual complaint over a neighbor's wind chimes, stood up. I knew something was wrong the day Karen fined me for having a cheerful garden gnome. I say it's time we return the favor. By the end of the night, we had a plan. Operation Homefront Uprising. It wasn't a military strike, but it may as well have been. Residents began turning their homes into low-key fortresses. One guy rerouted the clubhouse Wi-Fi to loop fake footage of peaceful budget meetings. Another reprogrammed motion sensors into intruder alerts disguised as lawn lights. Even the kids got involved, setting up lookouts with walkie-talkies, creating a code system involving flag colors and mailbox flags. We rebranded it all as a block party. To outsiders, it looked like suburban bliss. Music, barbecue smoke, people laughing. But beneath the surface, strategy. And then came the final move. Ted announced a formal HOA board reinstatement ceremony, complete with embossed invitations, a catered buffet, and a speech titled, "Restoring Order Through Community Standards." It was supposed to be his crowning moment. We RSVP'd yes. The clubhouse lawn transformed into a cheerful nightmare. Residents wore their Sunday best. Inflatable dinosaurs bobbed beside custom flower arrangements. Kids played tag between bushes. It was picture-perfect chaos, but it was laced with rebellion. Elena had rigged the decorative lanterns to release a pink powder when opened, visible under UV light. The podium mic was a hot mic, wired to play hidden audio. The door handles, coated in a marker that would glow under a certain light frequency. And the pièce de résistance? The flamingos. Those innocent-looking pink plastic lawn ornaments, outfitted with motion sensors and dye canisters. Ted stepped up to the podium like a man stepping onto a stage he believed he owned. "Pinewood," he began, "has always been a beacon of civility and control," he droned on. And then, halfway through his preamble, he reached under the podium and pressed a button. It was supposed to trigger a silent signal to his cleanup crew. Instead, it activated our sound system. His own pre-recorded voice filled the air. "Get ready to move on the targets. If they resist, we neutralize." The neighborhood froze. Then Mr. Davis walked up and calmly poured a glass of lemonade on Ted's loafers. The crowd erupted, phones out, voices rising. Ted panicked and ran. Right through the flamingos. They activated in sequence, spraying him in clouds of neon pink. By the time he reached his SUV, he looked like a radioactive cotton candy puff. The video went viral before sunset. That night we sat on our porch, sipping drinks and watching the fireworks. Shrubbery brought over snacks. George waved from across the street. Even Bob smiled, and Elena swore that was rarer than a lunar eclipse. The HOA had fallen. Again. But this time, the residents had taken it down themselves. In the weeks that followed, Pinewood evolved. The clubhouse still bore faint UV stains. But people were different now. Stronger. United. A little rebellious. And finally, free. Elena received a plain white envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single line. "Your neighborhood is now officially marked as neutral ground." No signature. But it meant something. We had won a strange, quiet war, and built something real out of the wreckage. Until, of course, a moving truck pulled in 2 doors down. A tall woman stepped out. Trench coat in summer. Mirrored glasses. Foreign accent giving directions to the movers. Elena watched from the window and sighed. "That's Belarusian," she muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "Just a coincidence?" She smirked. "Maybe she just likes dramatic coats." I leaned over. "Should I dig out the flamingos?" She smiled. "Not yet. But keep the porch swing camera on." In the end, Pinewood Estates didn't just survive. It transformed. Not because someone in a suit showed up to fix things. Not because a secret agency swept in with flash grenades and dossiers. No. Pinewood changed because ordinary people, teachers, dog walkers, grumpy old men and moms with lemonade, decided they'd had enough. They took back their neighborhood one pink flamingo, one hacked lantern, one porch swing conversation at a time. And as for Elena and me, well, we still sip tea on the porch. We still talk about mailboxes and hedges and whose kid keeps setting off the motion lights. But under the surface, there's something deeper. An understanding that peace doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from facing what's not, and having the courage to do something about it. The truth is, freedom doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a badge. Sometimes it wears yoga pants and bakes banana bread. Sometimes it's disguised as a boring HOA complaint. Sometimes it's your neighbor silently standing up when no one else will. And in a world where control can creep in quietly, through rules, policies, and polite smiles, it's easy to forget that we're allowed to ask questions, to resist, to protect our peace. That's the real story. Not just about spies or sabotage or HOA conspiracies. It's about knowing that even in the most ordinary places, power can be abused, and even the most ordinary people can fight back. With unity, creativity, and a deep belief that home should feel like yours. So maybe next time someone tells you to change your mailbox because it's too expressive, or fines you for having a yellow door that's aggressively cheerful, or tells you to sit down, shut up, and just follow the rules, you'll remember Pinewood. You'll remember that sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is stand on your porch, look power in the eye, and say, "Not today." And if a flamingo happens to explode while you do it, even better. Because the truth is, freedom is messy, ridiculous, and worth every second of the fight. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever faced your own HOA moment? Have you stood up to something that didn't feel right, even when no one else did? Tell us in the comments. Let's start a conversation. Let's build a porch of our own, right here. And if stories like this ignite something in you, hit that subscribe button. Follow the Story Forge for more wild, heartfelt tales that blend reality with a spark of rebellion. Because sometimes, the most powerful revolutions start right at your front door.